These questions have come through Facebook, and I picked up the ones that have come most frequently.
Can I just, before you were talking, you were in the Buddhist monastery in Thailand, and there's this Buddhist scripture that came to mind that is one of my favorite sutras. I don't remember what it's called. It's a famous sutra. The Buddha is supposed to have said it, but of course you never know. But it says, so the Buddha is speaking to the monks. So he says, "There is, O monks, the unborn, the uncreated, the unmanifested. If there were not the unborn, the uncreated, and the unmanifested, there would be no escape from the born, the created, and the manifested."
That's beautiful. Even the idea of freedom is an idea. Beautiful. So I actually think I know the answer to this, but this is for you. It says, can you describe... Can you describe your daily spiritual practices? Have they changed over the years?
Well, I don't, as you probably know, I don't have a practice as such, not a formal practice as a separate activity from ordinary daily living, but what naturally arises a lot of the time is spacious awareness. So I sometimes say it's a humorous, meant to be taken humorously. It's my greatest achievement in life is that I don't need to think all the time anymore. And that makes life into a much more pleasant experience if you can be there as just as the presence. And so it's the intensity as I experience it may sometimes varies. Sometimes presence can in certain occasions almost obliterate everything else. And at other times it's always there's that space in the background. So it's hard to describe, but I'm sure you all know, you've already, almost all of you have experienced it. If you're not yet permanently in presence, that's fine, but it is arising. So actually alignment with the present moment is, you could say, is my practice, but it's become second nature, so I can't call it practice anymore.
Okay, so I'd like to kind of say what my practice is, because I actually was a disciple of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi for many, many years, and he did, in fact, initiate me into the practice that we all do here. And after a while, I did realize that the practice was like a tool. And for me, I still do it because I'm so used to it. And besides that, sometimes, even though I ignore the thoughts, they give me great ideas, and I make a living by selling words. So I stay with the practice. Eckhart, how would you define happiness? Is being happy a realistic goal?
Is it a realistic goal? Well, it's partly a question of semantics, by which I mean what do we mean when we say happy? I personally don't use that term very much, but I know that, for example, Ramana Maharshi said, your true nature is happiness. Happiness is your true nature. So he uses that term in a particular way. I wouldn't use the word that much because for most people, in common usage, happiness is a high. You experience a high and usually a temporary high. Ah, I'm so great. Yeah. And so it's you cannot be on a permanent high. So if you have a high, you also experience the low. Oh, I thought that was going to be it, but it wasn't it. So the term that I would use is spaciousness, joy, perhaps. It's that which makes the Buddha smile. When you look at statues, the good ones of the Buddha, in the bad ones he looks miserable. But in the good ones, there's just a hint of a smile on his lips. And why is the Buddha smiling? If you approach Buddhism from a purely intellectual viewpoint, in some universities they'll tell you that Buddhism is a life-denying religion because they don't really understand it, they only understand the statements. And Buddha said emptiness is the ultimate answer, which of course is true, but you cannot, if you've never had even a glimpse of emptiness, you will think it's life-denying. So the Buddha has a slight smile because no matter what the Buddha experiences, he experiences everything against the background of emptiness. Another word for which would be spaciousness, or another word for which would be stillness. There's always that stillness, and the Buddha is the stillness. The Buddha is rooted in the stillness, which is, when we use words, we create a duality, but the Buddha is the stillness. So that is really, I think when Ramana Maharshi used the term happiness, and I don't know whether it's even a correct translation from what he used in his native language, that is, I believe, what he pointed to. I personally would not use the term happiness. I don't know about you.
Well, in the Buddha's teaching, there are 4 qualities of consciousness that he calls divine. So the first is loving kindness. The second is joy, which is not happiness. Happiness is a thought, okay? Joy is without thought. The third is compassion. And the fourth is equanimity. And if you really think of these qualities of consciousness, they're actually, at a very primordial level, they are not thought, okay? None of them is thought. All these are very subtle ways of communion, which means me and the other is one, okay? So when Eckhart said, you know, happiness is high and lows, yeah, happiness is a melodrama in a way, and joy is not. Joy is essential. This question on Facebook: I'm an artist and drew inspiration for my work from the simple and genuine love that existed between me and my husband until I found out that he betrayed me. Now I feel like my core is empty and my creativity is dead. How do I inspire myself to dream and imagine again?
Well, that's a sad story, but it comes from it is, of course, it's a story, but as long as that is very real to you, there's suffering in it, and there's a way out. I'd like to point the way beyond that for this person. Your husband betrayed you, okay. Your husband is a human being, I assume. Now, I love that term human being because we have 2 words here. We have human and we have being. Now, that which the love in you, when you were in the presence of your husband, that which you loved in the husband was the same in you, it was the being quality of that human. And the human is the form as which that he assumes that form. And that form is imperfect. So when you don't know, when you bring them together, you think that that love was an illusion, but it was not. You just haven't recognized that there is the dimension of being in him and in you, and that's from that recognition love arose. But the mind mixes it up with the form, and the form is imperfect. And so because of that, now, because you have the thought, what you're telling yourself in your head is now blocking that deeper awareness. The story that you believe in your head, that you are telling yourself, is blocking the deeper awareness of being. And that is, once you recognize that, you can feel that love again, because that love is who you essentially are. And so, and then the possibility of forgiveness also arises. Your husband, you forgive the human and whatever unconsciousness the human manifested. But the real forgiveness cannot arise until you know yourself as the formless, no longer identify with what arises in the world of form. And then you can look through that, and forgiveness arises naturally.
Could we say that the husband is the human being, but he is also being human?
Yes.
What is the best possible outcome of a life that one could hope for? What should we strive to create for ourselves? Strive.
Well, the best and the one single worthwhile, truly worthwhile thing is to encounter, to realize, to discover transcendence in your life, so that you're no longer trapped in that narrow, personalized, form-identified, thought-identified sense of self. And if there's nothing to you but that the person, then life is a very frustrating business. And this is what the Buddha referred to when he used the term suffering, and said, whatever you do, wherever you go, you will encounter that. But he also pointed the way beyond. So there is the possibility of realizing your formless, true nature. And that begins with a gap between two thoughts. It begins this moment when your attention moves fully into this moment. Not just awareness of sense perceptions, but also, and this sounds a little strange, but it's key, awareness of awareness. So if you can be aware at this moment, not only of that which arises in your immediate sense experience or thoughts or emotional field, but if you can be aware, in language we always, of course, language always creates duality, so you have to make allowances for that. If you can be aware right now, it can only be realized now. If you can be aware that you are aware right now, in addition to the things that you perceive, there is a space of awareness. That is what makes life worthwhile. And then when that arises and then becomes a living realization in you, that is really the one thing, as Jesus said, there's only one thing that truly matters. And then you have chosen that one thing. That's the Mary and Martha story in the Gospels, where Jesus said to Mary, you have chosen the one thing that really matters. Whereas Martha was running around, oh, I have to think about this, do this, get this ready. There's one thing that truly matters. And then the rest of your life, what form it takes, is secondary. It will unfold beautifully. With, of course, comes nothing is permanent, and you won't need to cling to things anymore and be afraid that they leave you. And very important, you won't have expectations that the world is going to make you happy. This is a very fundamental thing that it's an error in their mind. They believe that the world somehow has the ability, if they could only engineer things in such a way that everything would just fit neatly into place, and at some point they can arrive at a place where the world is going to provide them with fulfillment. And of course, advertising knows that, and so advertising is built on that to foster that belief that the world can do that. So once you know yourself as awareness, which is a joyous thing, there's a deep joy and satisfaction in knowing yourself as awareness, then you don't expect anymore that situations, conditions, or people should make you happy. And the paradox is, when you don't have the expectation that people, situation, or people should make you happy and satisfy you, they are actually quite satisfied.
So that's what's, stresses the universe is not behaving the way I think it should. Our culture seems to foster the desire to judge ourselves, honing in on what is wrong with our body, where we have fallen short, how we are not measuring us up. Many of us have a harsh inner critic, and we say things to ourselves that we would never say to a friend or loved one. How do we learn to turn off this inner judge when it has been harping at us for many decades?
The inner critic, for some people have that very strongly. Other people experience it from time to time. Sometimes the mind is, you feel happy with yourself, and then the next day something else. But it manifests in different ways for different people. For some it's mainly the inner critic, criticizing myself. For others are very critical about other people. Others are very critical about situations they find themselves in. They're always complaining. You may remember from before you awakened spiritually that a lot of the time there was this compulsive mind activity. A lot of that was actually complaining about things and people and where one is and why they should have, why didn't they, they should. Countless stories that and so people are trapped in this torture of their own minds, and the question is how to step out. Anything we say about how to go beyond that presupposes that there's already a minimum of awareness in you from where you can realize what your mind is doing. So that needs to be there, and that is there in all of you and much more, of course. There are still millions of people on the planet. They're also on their way. They don't have yet the minimum awareness. Tell a terrorist or any fundamentalist to be aware of their own thoughts or question them. They would get very angry. And so I don't recommend that. They are not ready for it. So, but you can recognize what your mind is doing to yourself, and you can then, if there is an awareness there, and then you can choose to direct your attention somewhere else. You don't have to follow every thought. You don't have to believe everything you think. Somebody even made that into a bumper sticker. I loved it. You don't have to believe everything you think. And that is an enormous, you can disidentify from your mind and see what the mind is doing. And you can then also, by choice, place your attention on a flower or the sky or anything natural. and you stepped out of. I also recommend for people who are very much burdened by the mind, place your attention into the inner energy field of your body. Feel the aliveness that pervades the entire body. And then you can't think that much anymore. You can't feel both the aliveness within your body and think a lot. So that takes your attention into, wake up in this, I don't know if anybody still experiences that here, you wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and you're thinking, and it's not pleasant. It's about my problems. And if you, then suddenly you discover the futility of it, and then you also have at that moment you have a choice. And then you can say, I choose to place my attention on the inner energy field of the body. And from one moment, from 1 minute to the next, you enjoy being awake at night and feel the intense aliveness in every cell of the body. That's one simple way. It's a kind of meditation practice. It's one simple way of taking attention away from thinking when you realize it is not only futile, it's also destructive. So that's and that needs to be then practiced if you have a meditation period. That's wonderful, of course, daily meditation period. But in addition, I always recommend mini meditations throughout the day, which could be a simple thing as taking 2 or 3 conscious breaths while you're waiting for the elevator. Or do something consciously with full attention that usually you do unconsciously, anything that is usually a means to an end, make it into an end in itself. Washing your hands. Be totally present. You're getting out of your mind. Walking down a few steps, be totally present rather than needing to get to the bottom. Be there in every step. So little mini meditations gradually help you to disidentify from the movement of thought. So this is what I would recommend to our questioner and to anybody else who is still burdened by their minds or tortured by their minds.
So for those of you who like formulas, here's one: STOP. Okay? It's an acronym. S stands for stop. T stands for take 3 deep breaths, as Eckhart just told us to. And while you're taking those 3 deep breaths, smile everywhere in your body, from head to toe. Okay. O stands for observe. Observe your body, as you said. And P stands for proceed with love and kindness. You break the response. Okay, so it's 9 o'clock and our live stream is ending, so I want to bring